Can a single piece of jewelry unravel decades of carefully constructed lies? For 29-year-old Ashley Morrison, a server at Seattle's most prestigious yacht club, that question became brutally relevant the afternoon she served lunch to tech billionaire Katherine Westbrook. For Katherine, the 68-year-old founder of Westbrook Technologies, whose software empire had revolutionized cloud computing, it was the moment a secret buried for 45 years threatened to destroy everything she'd built. Ashley was desperately trying to keep her young son's rare blood disorder treatments affordable after her insurance denied coverage. Katherine was hosting a quarterly investor luncheon, but when Ashley recognized the antique diamond brooch pinned to Katherine's blazer, identical to the one hidden in her late mother's safety deposit box, a single question would expose corporate espionage, stolen intellectual property, and a sister who had been erased from family history. This isn't about lost heirlooms or mistaken identity. This is about how ambition can poison families, how stolen ideas become fortunes, and how the children of those betrayals eventually demand justice. Some legacies are built on brilliance, others are built on theft, and eventually the truth demands to be heard. But one rainy October afternoon, an innocent comment about antique jewelry would set off a chain reaction that would topple a tech empire and reveal the real cost of success built on betrayal. The Pacific Northwest Yacht Club, perched on the edge of Puget Sound, its massive windows offering views of sailboats and the Seattle skyline beyond. Ashley navigated the dining room with practiced efficiency, her black server's uniform impeccable despite the chaos of a sold-out lunch service. The yacht club catered to Seattle's elite, tech executives, real estate moguls, old money families who'd owned waterfront property for generations. At 29, Ashley had been working at the club for 6 years, ever since her son Dylan was born with diamond blackfan anemia, a rare blood disorder requiring regular transfusions and treatments that cost thousands of dollars monthly. Dylan's father had disappeared the moment the diagnosis came, leaving Ashley to navigate single motherhood and medical bankruptcy alone. Her mother Linda had helped until pancreatic cancer took her 18 months ago, leaving Ashley completely alone except for her 6-year-old son. The morning had started like any other. Ashley had woken at 5:30 in their small Capitol Hill apartment, made Dylan's breakfast, and watched him eat his fortified cereal while asking endless questions about whales. His pale skin showed the effects of his latest round of treatments, but his spirit remained unbreakable. "Mommy, can we go to the aquarium this weekend?" Dylan had asked, his brown eyes hopeful despite the bruises on his arms from blood draws. "Maybe, sweetheart. Let me see if I can pick up an extra shift." Ashley had kissed his forehead, tasting the salt of her own tears she'd been holding back. Every maybe felt like a broken promise, another thing she couldn't afford to give her son. Her neighbor Mrs. Chen had arrived at 6:15 to watch Dylan while Ashley worked. The elderly woman refused payment, claiming Dylan was better company than television, but Ashley knew it was charity. She added it to the mental ledger of debts she'd never be able to repay. The bus ride to the yacht club took 40 minutes, giving Ashley time to transform from exhausted single mother into polished server. She applied makeup to hide the dark circles under her eyes, practiced her professional smile in her phone's camera, and mentally prepared for 8 hours of catering to people whose monthly wine budgets exceeded her annual income. Katherine Westbrook's party arrived at noon sharp. 8 executives and investors, all dressed in business casual that cost more than Ashley's monthly rent. Katherine was unmistakable, even if you didn't recognize her face from magazine covers. She carried herself with the absolute confidence of someone who'd built a $10 billion company from nothing, whose software ran on 80% of the world's servers. Ashley had served Katherine twice before, both times noting the woman's imperious demeanor and habit of barely acknowledging servers. Today, Katherine wore a navy Armani blazer with cream silk blouse, pearl earrings that probably cost 5 figures, and shoes Ashley recognized from a Vogue spread as limited edition Louboutin. "Good afternoon, Ms. Westbrook," Ashley said, approaching with menus. "Welcome to the Pacific Northwest Yacht Club." Katherine glanced up briefly, her ice-blue eyes assessing and dismissing Ashley in a single moment. "Sparkling water for the table. And bring the wine list, the reserve collection, not the standard offerings." "Of course, ma'am." As Ashley distributed menus, she noticed the brooch pinned to Katherine's navy blazer. It was extraordinary. An Art Deco piece featuring a large center diamond surrounded by smaller stones arranged in a geometric sunburst pattern. But what made Ashley's breath catch was the unique detail, tiny sapphires forming a constellation pattern within the diamond sunburst, creating the appearance of a night sky. The craftsmanship was museum quality. Each diamond was precisely cut to catch light from different angles, creating a subtle shimmer effect. The platinum setting showed the kind of hand engraving that modern jewelers couldn't replicate. And the sapphires, 7 of them arranged in the exact pattern of Orion's belt and surrounding stars, were calibrated to size, creating depth and dimension. Ashley knew that pattern. She'd seen it exactly once, 3 weeks ago when sorting through her mother's belongings. Linda had kept a safety deposit box that Ashley hadn't known about, containing only one item, an identical diamond brooch wrapped in tissue paper with a note. "This belongs to you. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything. The truth would have destroyed us both. Love, Mom." That day in the bank's vault room, Ashley had held the brooch up to the fluorescent lights, mesmerized by its beauty and confused by its existence. Linda Morrison had lived modestly, working as a technical writer, driving a 15-year-old Honda, shopping at Goodwill. Where had she gotten jewelry worth easily $50,000? And why had she hidden it, instead of selling it during the desperate years when they'd struggled to pay for Dylan's treatments? The matching was impossible to ignore. The sapphire constellation pattern wasn't random. It formed Orion, the hunter, with perfect astronomical accuracy. The craftsmanship was too distinctive to be coincidental. Ashley's voice came out shakier than intended as she returned with the water. "Ms. Westbrook, I have to say, your brooch is absolutely stunning. The sapphire constellation pattern is remarkable." Katherine's hand went immediately to the jewelry, her expression shifting from mild annoyance to sharp suspicion. "How do you know it's a constellation pattern? Most people just see decorative stones. My mother had one just like it, with Orion in sapphires. I thought it was unique." The color drained from Katherine's face. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. One of the executives, a balding man in his 50s, reached out to steady her. "Katherine, are you all right?" "I'm fine," Katherine snapped, pulling away from his hand. She grabbed Ashley's wrist, her grip surprisingly strong for a woman in her late 60s. "Come with me, now." The other executives at the table exchanged confused glances as Katherine dragged Ashley toward the club's private conference rooms. Ashley's manager, Gerald, started to object. "Ms. Westbrook, I'm sure whatever the issue is, we can resolve it without—" "This doesn't concern you," Katherine said, her voice carrying the kind of authority that had commanded boardrooms for decades. Gerald fell silent, though his expression showed concern for Ashley. The conference room Katherine chose was one of the smaller ones, designed for intimate business discussions. Dark mahogany paneling, leather chairs, a view of the sound through floor-to-ceiling windows. The door had barely closed before Katherine released Ashley's wrist and turned away, gripping the back of a chair. Ashley rubbed her wrist, feeling the indents Katherine's fingers had left. "Ms. Westbrook, I don't understand. If I said something wrong, what was your mother's name?" Katherine's voice was barely above a whisper. "Linda Morrison. She passed away 18 months ago from pancreatic cancer." Katherine's shoulders shook. For a moment, Ashley thought the woman was laughing, but then she realized Katherine was crying, silent, violent sobs that seemed to tear through her controlled exterior. "Ms. Westbrook." Katherine turned slowly, and Ashley was shocked to see tears streaming down the billionaire's face, carving paths through her expertly applied makeup. "Linda Morrison, God, after all these years. Did you know my mother?" "Know her?" Katherine laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that echoed in the quiet room. Linda Morrison was my sister, my older sister, and I spent 45 years pretending she never existed. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Ashley groped for a chair, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. The leather was cool beneath her palms, grounding her as the room seemed to tilt. That's impossible. My mother never mentioned having a sister. She said she was an only child. She said, "Because I made her say that," Katherine interrupted, her voice breaking. "I made her disappear from family history. I stole from her, betrayed her, and then used my money and power to ensure she could never tell anyone the truth." Ashley's mind raced through memories of her mother. Linda had been quiet, almost secretive about her past. There were no childhood photos on display, no stories about siblings or extended family. When Ashley had asked as a child why they never visited relatives at holidays, Linda had simply said, "It's just you and me, sweetheart. That's all the family we need." Ashley had assumed her mother's reticence came from painful losses, deceased parents perhaps, or family estrangement. She'd never imagined a sister who'd been systematically erased. "What did you do to her?" Ashley asked, her voice steady despite the fury building in her chest. Katherine walked to the window, staring out at the grey Seattle sky. A sailboat glided across the Sound, its white sails brilliant against the clouds. "Everything. My entire fortune, my company, my reputation, all of it was built on technology that Linda invented. I stole her work, filed the patents under my name, and when she threatened to expose me, I destroyed her credibility and drove her out of the industry." The words hung in the air, damning and undeniable. Ashley thought about her mother, brilliant, quiet Linda, who'd worked as a technical writer for various software companies, never quite achieving the success her talents deserved. Linda, who'd helped Ashley with calculus homework, who could debug computer code in her head, who died in a modest apartment leaving behind medical debt and a mysterious diamond brooch. "You're saying my mother invented the technology that made you a billionaire? The core architecture of Westbrook Cloud Services?" "Yes." Katherine's voice was hollow, emotionless, as if she were reciting facts from a quarterly report. "Linda developed it in 1979 when we were both working at a small tech startup in Silicon Valley. Data Stream Systems. You probably never heard of it. The company folded in 1982, absorbed by larger corporations." Katherine turned from the window, and Ashley saw something that looked almost like pain in her eyes. "We shared an apartment in Mountain View, 2 MIT graduates trying to make it in the boys' club of Silicon Valley. Linda was the genius. She could see patterns in code that others missed, could architect systems that were years ahead of their time. I was just ambitious and willing to do whatever it took to succeed, so you stole her work. She showed me her breakthrough," Katherine continued as if Ashley hadn't spoken. "Late one night, after we'd both been working 18-hour days. She was so excited, so proud. She'd figured out a way to distribute data storage across networked servers that would revolutionize how computers shared information. She explained every detail, drew diagrams on our kitchen whiteboard, talked about publishing her findings in computer science journals." Katherine's hands clenched into fists. "And I saw an opportunity, not just a technical achievement, but a commercial goldmine. Linda wanted to share her work with the academic community, contribute to open-source development. She thought success meant advancing human knowledge. I knew success meant controlling the technology and monetizing it. You copied her work. I photographed every diagram while she slept. I recreated her code in my own files. I filed patent applications under my own name, using slightly different terminology, but essentially identical architecture. And I launched Westbrook Technologies 6 months before she could secure her own patents." Ashley felt sick. She must have realized what you'd done. "Eventually, she came to my new office. I'd rented space in Palo Alto with venture capital I'd secured using her technology, and she was devastated. Not angry at first, just hurt. She couldn't believe I'd betrayed her." Katherine's voice cracked. "She asked me why. She said we were family, that we were supposed to support each other. What did you tell her?" "I told her I'd done us both a favor. that her work would have languished in obscurity if I hadn't commercialized it. I offered her a job at Westbrook Technologies, said we could build the company together. Did she accept? Katherine shook her head. She called me a thief, said she was going to file her own patent applications, go public with what I'd done, expose me to the venture capitalists and clients I'd already signed. So I did what I had to do to protect myself. The casual way Katherine said what I had to do made Ashley's blood run cold. What did you do? I hired investigators, had them dig into every aspect of Linda's life. They found a marijuana conviction from college, stupid youthful mistake, possession of less than an ounce, but still on her record. They found some questionable financial decisions, credit card debt, a bounced check from when she was 22. Katherine met Ashley's eyes. I compiled all of it into a file. Then I contacted every tech publication, every industry connection, everyone who mattered. I told them Linda Morrison was trying to steal credit for my work, that she was a failed colleague with a drug history and financial problems trying to extort me. I had lawyers send her cease and desist letters. I had my PR team paint her as unstable, jealous, delusional. You destroyed her reputation before she could tell the truth. Yes, and when that wasn't enough, when she still tried to file patent applications and reach out to former colleagues, I offered her a settlement, $200,000 in exchange for signing a non-disclosure agreement and never claiming credit for the technology. She refused at first, said it was about recognition, not money. So I made it clear what would happen if she didn't sign. Ashley stood up, unable to sit still any longer. You threatened her. I told her I'd release all the information my investigators had gathered. I'd make sure she never worked in tech again. I'd tie her up in legal battles for years, drain whatever savings she had on lawyer fees. And most importantly, I told her that her recent medical diagnosis, Ashley's heart stopped. What medical diagnosis? She was pregnant. Katherine's voice was barely audible. 3 months. She hadn't told anyone yet, but my investigators found the medical records. I told her that the stress of a legal battle, the public humiliation, the financial ruin, all of it would affect her pregnancy. I asked if exposing me was worth risking her unborn child. The room spun. Ashley gripped the edge of the conference table, trying to process what she'd just heard. Linda had been pregnant when Katherine blackmailed her. Pregnant with Ashley. You threatened my life before I was even born. I threatened her pregnancy, Katherine corrected coldly. I made her choose between justice and her child's well-being, and she chose you. She signed the NDA, took the money, and disappeared from my life. Ashley felt tears burning her eyes, but refused to let them fall. That money, the $200,000, that's what bought our house. The small house in Ballard where I grew up. I assume so. I never followed up to see how she spent it. Once she signed, she was dead to me. But you didn't stop there, did you? Ashley asked, the pieces falling into place. You couldn't just let her live quietly. You had to make sure she could never rise above the life you'd forced her into. Katherine's silence was answer enough. Every job application that went nowhere, Ashley continued, her voice gaining strength. Every patent she tried to file that got mysteriously rejected. Every professional connection that suddenly went cold. That was you. You spent 45 years making sure my mother could never escape what you'd done to her. I protected my interests, Katherine said. Every successful person has to make difficult choices. Linda chose to have you instead of fighting me. That was her decision. She was 3 months pregnant and facing financial ruin at the hands of her own sister. Ashley's voice rose, professional composure finally breaking. That's not a choice. That's extortion. That's destroying someone's life and calling it business. Katherine straightened, her vulnerable moment passing. The crying had stopped, and the formidable CEO returned, cold, controlled, utterly certain of her right to have done what she'd done. Your mother made her peace with it. She lived her life, raised you, and kept her mouth shut for 45 years. Why are you dredging this up now? Because she left me the brooch, Ashley said, and a letter telling me to find the truth if I ever met you. She documented everything, every stolen idea, every blocked opportunity, every act of corporate espionage. She spent 45 years building a case she was too afraid to use herself. But I'm not afraid. Katherine's expression shifted from arrogance to calculation. You have documentation? Technical diagrams in her handwriting dated before your patent filings. Letters between you discussing the collaborative project, patent applications she drafted, and a timeline of every suspicious career setback she experienced, cross-referenced with your company's growth milestones. That proves nothing, Katherine said, but her voice lacked conviction. It proves you're a thief, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. Katherine moved faster than Ashley expected, crossing the room in 3 strides and grabbing Ashley's shoulders. Listen to me very carefully. I have an army of lawyers, unlimited resources and connections that reach into every corner of this industry. If you try to go public with whatever evidence you think you have, I will destroy you, just like I destroyed Linda. I'm not my mother, Ashley said quietly. I don't have anything you can take. I'm already working 3 jobs to pay for my son's medical treatments. I'm already 1 crisis away from bankruptcy. What exactly can you threaten me with that I'm not already facing? Katherine's grip tightened. Your son, Dylan, isn't it? 6 years old, diamond black fan anemia. Very expensive condition to treat. I can make sure every insurance company denies coverage. I can get you fired from all your jobs, this club, the coffee shop, wherever else you're barely scraping by. I can ensure that Child Protective Services takes a very close look at whether you're providing adequate care for a child with a serious medical condition. The threat against Dylan was a line crossed. Ashley jerked away from Katherine's grip, her fear transforming into pure rage. You would threaten a sick child? I would do whatever is necessary to protect what I've built, Katherine said. Just like I did 45 years ago. Your mother understood that. She chose to stay silent because she knew I'd win any fight she tried to start. You'd be wise to make the same choice. Ashley walked to the door, her hand on the handle. My mother stayed silent because she was alone and scared and protecting an unborn child. I'm not alone, and I'm done being scared. You're going to face consequences for what you did, Katherine. Maybe not today, but soon. She pulled open the door and walked out, leaving Katherine Westbrook standing in the conference room with her stolen empire and the diamond brooch that symbolized a betrayal decades in the making. Ashley finished her shift in a daze, mechanically serving food and refilling drinks while her mind churned. Katherine had returned to her table as if nothing had happened, conducting business with her executives while occasionally touching the brooch at her collar, a gesture that now seemed obscenely proprietary. At the end of her shift, Gerald pulled Ashley aside. Are you all right? Ms. Westbrook seemed quite upset earlier. I'm fine, Ashley lied. Just a misunderstanding about jewelry. Gerald looked skeptical but didn't push. Well, she left this for you. He handed Ashley an envelope. Inside was $500 in cash and a business card with a handwritten note. Consider this a gift for your son's medical expenses. Please don't make me regret my generosity. KW, Ashley stared at the money, more than she made in a week, and felt ill. It was blood money, a bribe, Katherine's way of reminding her that wealth could buy silence. She considered ripping it up, throwing it back in Katherine's face. But Dylan needed new medication, and pride wouldn't pay for it. She pocketed the cash and the note, adding them to the evidence she was building. Ashley drove straight to her mother's bank, her mind churning with fury and purpose. The safety deposit box Linda had left contained more than just the brooch. There had to be documentation, evidence, something that could prove her mother's claims. Linda Morrison might have signed a non-disclosure agreement under duress, but Ashley hadn't signed anything. The bank was in Ballard, the neighborhood where Ashley had grown up. She drove past the small house Linda had bought with Katherine's blood money, now owned by a young tech couple who'd renovated it beyond recognition. The modest, single-story bungalow Ashley remembered, with its peeling paint and overgrown garden, had been transformed into a showpiece with modern siding and professional landscaping. Inside the bank, Ashley waited while the manager retrieved the box. The small private room felt claustrophobic, the walls closing in as she lifted the metal lid. The diamond brooch sat on top, still wrapped in tissue paper. Beneath it was a leather portfolio, aged, worn, the kind professionals used in the pre-digital era. Ashley opened the portfolio with trembling hands. Inside were technical documents dated 1979, hand-drawn architectural diagrams showing data flow patterns and server configurations. Linda's handwriting was immediately recognizable, precise, methodical, with tiny annotations in the margins explaining complex concepts. The first document was titled Distributed Cloud Storage Architecture, a Revolutionary Approach to Data Management. It was dated March 15, 1979, and signed by Linda Morrison. Ashley flipped through page after page of technical specifications, each one demonstrating a level of innovation that was clearly years ahead of its time. But what really caught Ashley's attention were the letters paperclipped to the technical documents. The first was dated April 3, 1979. Dear Katherine, I wanted to share some exciting developments in my research. I think I've cracked the distributed storage problem we've been discussing. The key is treating data like water. It flows to where it's needed, finds the path of least resistance, and can be accessed from any point in the network. I've sketched out the basic architecture, and I think it could revolutionize how we think about data management. Can we meet for coffee this weekend? I'd love to get your feedback before I present this to Dr. Morrison at DataStream. I think this could be big for both of us. Love, Linda. The letter was written on lined notebook paper, informal and trusting. Ashley could almost hear her mother's excitement in the words, see her hunched over their kitchen table in Mountain View, pen in hand, eager to share her breakthrough with her sister. The next letter was dated 2 weeks later, April 18, 1979, Katherine. I don't understand what's happening. Dr. Morrison says you filed preliminary patent applications last week for a novel distributed data architecture. When I showed him my work, he said it looked derivative of your filings. How is that possible? I showed you my work first. We talked about developing it together. Please call me. I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding. Linda, the tone had shifted, confusion replacing excitement, hurt creeping in at the edges. Ashley imagined her mother's dawning realization that her sister, her confidant, had betrayed her. The letters continued, each one documenting Linda's growing desperation and Katherine's calculated destruction. There were copies of patent applications Linda had tried to file, all rejected because Katherine's earlier filings established prior art. There were rejection letters from venture capitalists who'd been told Linda was unstable and attempting to plagiarize Katherine Westbrook's innovative work. And then there was the NDA, a thick legal document dated September 12, 1979. Ashley read through the dense legalese, her stomach churning. The agreement didn't just prohibit Linda from claiming credit for her invention. It prevented her from working in cloud computing, from publishing research in the field, from even discussing her technical work with colleagues without Katherine's written permission. In exchange for signing away her entire professional identity, Linda received $200,000 and a promise that Katherine would refrain from further legal action or public disparagement. Clipped to the NDA was a medical document, a prenatal examination report dated August 20, 1979. Linda Morrison, 12 weeks pregnant. I risk pregnancy due to stress and financial insecurity. Doctor's recommendation. Patient requires stable, low-stress environment for healthy fetal development. Katherine had used Ashley's own existence as leverage against her mother, but Linda hadn't stopped documenting. Beneath the NDA were years of carefully maintained records, job applications submitted and mysteriously rejected, patent attempts that disappeared into bureaucratic black holes, professional contacts who suddenly stopped returning calls. Each incident was dated, cross-referenced, and annotated with Linda's suspicions about Katherine's involvement. The final document in the portfolio was the sealed envelope Linda had left, marked, "For Ashley, open only if you discover the truth." Ashley had already opened it at home, but she read it again now. Her mother's words taking on new weight. My dearest Ashley, if you're reading this, you've encountered Katherine and discovered our family's terrible secret. I'm sorry I never told you while I was alive. I was ashamed, not of what happened, but of my weakness in accepting her terms. Katherine didn't just steal my technology. She systematically destroyed every attempt I made to rebuild my career. Every job interview that mysteriously went nowhere. Every patent application that got lost. Every professional connection that suddenly went cold. Katherine was behind it all. She used her growing influence to ensure I could never rise above mediocrity. I signed her NDA because I had no choice. Your father had just left, you were on the way, and I had no money for lawyers to fight her. She offered $200,000 in exchange for my silence. I took it, used it to buy our small house, and tried to build a life for us despite her sabotage. But I never stopped documenting everything. Every stolen idea, every blocked opportunity, every act of corporate espionage. I saved it all, hoping that someday the truth would matter more than her power. I kept the brooch hidden because I couldn't bear to wear it. It reminded me too much of what Katherine and I could have been together. Two sisters, both brilliant, supporting each other's dreams. Instead, she stole my dreams and forced me to watch her live the life that should have been mine. The brooch is yours now, as is the truth. What you do with it is your choice. But know this, Katherine Westbrook is not invincible. Her empire is built on theft, and lies eventually collapse under their own weight. I know you'll want to fight her. You've always been braver than I was, more willing to stand up against injustice. But please, sweetheart, be careful. Katherine will use everything she has to destroy you. Protect Dylan, protect yourself. And remember that winning doesn't always mean destroying your enemy. Sometimes it just means surviving them and living a good life despite what they've done. I love you. I'm sorry I couldn't fight her myself. But maybe you can finish what I started. Mom Ashley sat in the bank's private room, crying as she absorbed her mother's final words. Linda had spent decades under Katherine's thumb, watching her sister build an empire with stolen ideas while she struggled in obscurity. She'd documented everything, built an ironclad case, and then been too afraid to use it. But Ashley wasn't afraid. Or rather, she was terrified, but she was also done with silence. She photographed every document, every letter, every piece of evidence. Then she carefully replaced everything in the portfolio and locked it back in the safety deposit box. The originals would stay safe. But the copies, those were going to war. Ashley's first call was to Marcus Chen, a former yacht club member who'd left his corporate law career to become an investigative journalist. She'd served him countless times over the years, always impressed by his sharp questions and refusal to accept corporate PR spin. He'd given her his card once, saying, "If you ever need someone to expose powerful people doing shady things, I'm your guy." She'd laughed it off at the time. Now, sitting in her car outside the bank, she dialed his number. Marcus answered on the third ring. "This is Chen, Mr. Chen. This is Ashley Morrison. I used to serve you at the Pacific Northwest Yacht Club." "Ashley, I remember you. Best server they had. What can I do for you?" "I need your help exposing Katherine Westbrook for stealing my mother's invention and building her empire on fraud." There was a long pause. "That's quite an opening statement. Can you meet me in an hour? There's a coffee shop in Capitol Hill, Espresso Vivace. You know it?" "I'll be there." The coffee shop was crowded with laptop-wielding freelancers and students. Marcus had secured a quiet corner table, his reporter's notebook already open. He was in his early 40s, with graying hair and the kind of alert expression that suggested he was always listening for the story beneath the story. Ashley ordered a black coffee she couldn't afford and joined him. For the next 2 hours, she laid out everything. The matching brooches, Katherine's confession, Linda's documentation, 45 years of systematic sabotage. Marcus took notes in shorthand, occasionally stopping her to ask clarifying questions or request specific dates. When she finished, he sat back and let out a low whistle. "Jesus, this is potentially the biggest tech industry scandal since Theranos. If these documents are authentic, and I'll need to verify that, You're sitting on proof that Katherine Westbrook built a $10 billion empire on stolen IP. Can you verify them? I know forensic document experts who can authenticate the dates and handwriting. I know former employees from DataStream Systems who might remember Linda's work. And I know other journalists who've been investigating Westbrook Technologies for years, but could never find solid evidence of wrongdoing. Marcus leaned forward. But Ashley, you need to understand what you're up against. Katherine Westbrook has unlimited resources and a reputation for destroying anyone who threatens her. She'll come after you with everything she has. She already threatened my son, Ashley said flatly. Threatened to get me fired, ruin my credit, call CPS. I don't have anything left she can take. Marcus studied her face, seeing the determination beneath the exhaustion. That's not quite true. You have your integrity, your health, your ability to care for Dylan. Katherine will try to take all of that. She'll paint you as an opportunist, a liar, a bad mother. She'll dig up every mistake you've ever made and amplify it in the media. Are you prepared for that? Ashley thought about Dylan, about the GoFundMe campaigns she'd run for his medical expenses, about the judgment she already faced as a single mother working multiple service jobs. I've been judged my entire life for being poor, for having a sick kid, for not being good enough. Katherine's lies can't make that worse. But if I don't fight her, Dylan grows up in a world where people like Katherine can steal and destroy without consequences. I won't teach him that. Marcus nodded slowly. Okay, then we do this right. Full investigation, multiple sources, ironclad documentation. I'll need a few weeks to verify everything and build the narrative. Can you hold out that long? I don't have a choice. And you need to be prepared for Katherine to strike first. The moment she realizes you're seriously pursuing this, she'll launch a preemptive attack. Do you have a lawyer? Ashley laughed bitterly. I can barely afford rent. I know someone who does pro bono work for whistleblowers and people fighting corporate malfeasance. Let me make some calls. Over the next 3 weeks, Ashley lived in a state of constant anxiety. She went to work at the yacht club, waiting for the firing she knew was coming. She picked up extra shifts at the coffee shop where she worked mornings. She took Dylan to his treatments, forcing smiles and optimism, while internally calculating how many more months she could afford his care. And every night, after Dylan was asleep, she met with Marcus and his growing team. They'd brought in Jennifer Torres, a civil rights attorney who specialized in David versus Goliath cases. They'd contacted Dr. Sarah Park, a forensic document examiner who'd testified in dozens of patent fraud cases. They'd interviewed 3 former DataStream Systems employees who remembered Linda Morrison's brilliant work and sudden departure from the industry. The case was coming together piece by piece, testimony by testimony. But so was Katherine's counterattack. It started small. Ashley's hours at the yacht club were quietly reduced. Her manager Gerald claimed it was due to seasonal slowdown, but his expression said he'd been pressured from above. Then her morning shift at the coffee shop was eliminated. Budget cuts, they said, though they hired someone new the following week. Dylan's insurance sent a letter saying they were reviewing his coverage due to irregularities in billing. The irregularities turned out to be nothing, but the review process would take 6 to 8 weeks, during which time his treatments would be on hold unless Ashley paid out of pocket. Someone called the landlord of Ashley's apartment building, claiming she was running an illegal business from her unit. It was false, easily disproven, but the landlord still gave her 30 days' notice to vacate for lease violations. Katherine was dismantling Ashley's life systematically, just as she'd done to Linda decades earlier. But there was one crucial difference. Ashley was documenting everything. Every suspicious firing, every insurance complication, every harassment. All of it was evidence of Katherine's pattern of destroying anyone who threatened her. She's doing our job for us, Marcus said grimly during one of their evening meetings. Every time she tries to silence you, she's proving Linda's documentation about decades of sabotage. We just need to hold out a little longer, but holding out was getting harder. Ashley was down to one part-time job, her savings depleted, her housing insecure. Mrs. Chen continued watching Dylan out of kindness, but Ashley knew she couldn't impose forever. She'd started selling possessions, her laptop, her mother's furniture, anything with value. The diamond brooch sat in her purse, worth easily $50,000. She could sell it, buy herself a few months of breathing room. But it felt like betrayal. This jewelry that represented her mother's stolen dreams, that had started her on this path toward justice. How could she sell the very symbol of what she was fighting for? One night, as Ashley sat at her kitchen table trying to make impossible numbers work on a budget spreadsheet, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, expecting another creditor or threatening message from Katherine's lawyers. Hello? Ashley Morrison? The voice was female, professional, unfamiliar. Yes, my name is Dr. Rachel Kim. I'm a research scientist at Westbrook Technologies, and I need to talk to you about Katherine Westbrook's pattern of stealing intellectual property. Can we meet? Over the next 6 weeks, Marcus and Ashley built their case. They found Linda's former colleagues from the 1979 startup, many of whom remembered her brilliant work and sudden disappearance from the industry. They discovered other innovators whose ideas had mysteriously ended up in Westbrook Technologies products, all silenced by NDAs and legal threats. They verified the technical documents, confirming Linda's handwriting and the dates through forensic analysis. And they discovered something even more damning. Katherine had continued stealing ideas throughout her career, establishing a pattern of corporate espionage hidden behind legitimate acquisition deals and consulting agreements. Westbrook Technologies wasn't just built on one theft, it was built on hundreds. Meanwhile, Katherine Westbrook was preparing her own offensive. 3 weeks after the yacht club encounter, Ashley received a registered letter from Westbrook Technologies' legal department. The contents made her blood run cold. The letter claimed Ashley had violated workplace conduct policies by harassing Katherine, making false accusations, and creating a hostile environment. It demanded she sign a statement recanting her claims and promising never to discuss Katherine Westbrook or her family again. In exchange, the company would provide a generous settlement of $100,000. If she refused, the letter continued, Westbrook Technologies would file a defamation lawsuit seeking $10 million in damages, seize her assets, including her mother's house, and ensure she'd never work in Seattle's service industry again. Furthermore, her son Dylan's medical records indicated concerning patterns of missed appointments and inadequate care, language clearly suggesting they'd report her to Child Protective Services. The threat against Dylan was the breaking point. Katherine wasn't just willing to destroy Ashley. She'd weaponize a sick child to protect her secrets. Ashley showed the letter to Marcus, her hands shaking with rage. She's threatening my son, threatening to take him away from me. Marcus read the letter carefully, his expression darkening. This is intimidation, pure and simple. The medical care allegations are baseless. I can see Dylan's records show you've been exceptional about his treatments. But Katherine knows the mere threat of a CPS investigation is terrifying for any parent. What do? We accelerate our timeline. I was planning to spend another month verifying sources, but Katherine's threatening a 6-year-old with a blood disorder. That crosses every ethical line. We publish what we have, and we publish it now. Will people believe us? Marcus smiled grimly. Ashley, your mother kept better documentation than most forensic accountants. We have technical diagrams in Linda's handwriting from before Katherine's patents were filed. We have letters showing they worked together. We have testimony from colleagues. And most importantly, we have the pattern. Dozens of other innovators with similar stories of Katherine stealing their ideas. This isn't speculation. This is evidence. The story broke on a grey November morning, published simultaneously in Marcus's investigative journalism platform, and picked up within hours by every major tech publication. The headline was simple and devastating. How Katherine Westbrook built a tech empire on stolen ideas, the sister she erased. The article laid out everything: Linda Morrison's original technical work, Katherine's theft and patent fraud, the decades of systematic silencing, and the current threat against Ashley and her son. Marcus had interviewed 15 other victims of Katherine's corporate espionage, creating an undeniable pattern of behavior. But what really captured public attention was the human story. Two sisters, one brilliant and kind, the other ambitious and ruthless. The matching diamond brooches symbolizing a betrayal that echoed across generations. And a young mother fighting for her mother's legacy while caring for a sick child. Within 24 hours, the story had gone viral. It was Justice for Linda trended on Twitter. Former Westbrook Technologies employees began coming forward with their own stories of stolen ideas and silenced complaints. Tech industry leaders who'd never questioned Katherine's success suddenly found themselves defending why they'd never investigated the obvious red flags. And the legal implications were catastrophic. The patents at the core of Westbrook Cloud Services were called into question. If Linda Morrison was the true inventor, then every licensing agreement, every product built on that technology, every billion-dollar contract, all of it was based on fraudulent IP claims. Westbrook Technologies' stock price collapsed, losing 40% of its value in 3 days. Board members called emergency meetings. Investors threatened lawsuits. And Katherine Westbrook, for the first time in her career, was forced to respond to accusations she couldn't simply buy her way out of. Her first response was predictable, a carefully worded statement claiming the accusations were baseless, family drama, and that Linda Morrison had been properly compensated for consulting work decades ago. The statement made no mention of the technical documents, the other victims, or the pattern of theft. But Katherine's lawyers knew the evidence was too strong to dismiss. They approached Marcus and Ashley with a settlement offer. Westbrook Technologies would establish a $100 million fund to compensate innovators whose ideas had been stolen, publicly acknowledge Linda Morrison's contributions to cloud computing technology, and add her name to the relevant patents posthumously. In exchange, Ashley would sign an NDA and agree never to speak publicly about Katherine again. Ashley read the offer in Marcus's office, then tore it in half. No, this isn't about money or even about credit. This is about Katherine Westbrook facing consequences for 45 years of corporate theft and family betrayal. She doesn't get to buy her way out of this. Ashley, that's $100 million for victims who need it, Marcus pointed out. And it gives your mother's name on patents, acknowledges her contribution. That's a significant victory. It's a partial victory that lets Katherine keep her reputation intact, Ashley countered. She gets to frame herself as the magnanimous CEO, correcting past mistakes rather than the thief she actually is. No. If she wants to make this right, she does it publicly, completely, with full accountability. Marcus respected Ashley's stance, but he also understood the brutal reality of fighting someone with Katherine's resources. Then we prepare for war. Katherine won't let this destroy her without fighting back with everything she has. He was right. Over the next weeks, Westbrook Technologies launched a comprehensive counterattack. Private investigators dug into Ashley's past, finding every financial struggle, every difficult moment, every mistake. Stories began appearing in tech blogs, questioning Ashley's credibility, suggesting she was a struggling single mother looking for a payday by inventing claims against a successful woman. Katherine's lawyers filed a defamation lawsuit seeking $20 million in damages. They subpoenaed Dylan's medical records, Ashley's financial statements, even her mother's psychiatric records from a brief depression after Katherine's initial betrayal. They were building a case that the Morrison family was unstable, unreliable, and motivated by jealousy rather than truth. Most devastatingly, they somehow got Ashley fired from the yacht club. The official reason was policy violations, but everyone knew the real cause. Katherine Westbrook had made a phone call, and Ashley was suddenly unemployable at Seattle's most prestigious venues. Without her yacht club income, Ashley couldn't afford Dylan's treatments. The medical bills piled up, insurance continued denying coverage, and she was forced to set up a GoFundMe to cover basic expenses. It was humiliating, desperate, and exactly what Katherine had promised would happen if Ashley didn't stay silent. But something unexpected occurred. The public, watching a billionaire crush a working single mother, turned decisively against Katherine. The GoFundMe raised $2 million in 3 weeks. Tech workers at Westbrook Technologies staged a walkout demanding accountability. Major clients began terminating contracts, citing ethical concerns. And most significantly, the FBI announced an investigation into Westbrook Technologies for potential patent fraud and corporate espionage spanning multiple decades. Katherine Westbrook had miscalculated. She'd spent her career operating in shadows, using money and power to silence victims before their stories gained traction. But Ashley's story had resonated too deeply, spread too fast, and revealed a pattern too obvious to ignore. The empire built on stolen ideas was finally collapsing. 6 months after the yacht club encounter, Ashley stood in a federal courtroom watching Katherine Westbrook face criminal charges for patent fraud, corporate espionage, and conspiracy. The woman who'd commanded boardrooms and built a tech empire looked diminished somehow, her confidence eroded by months of investigations and defections. The trial lasted 8 weeks. Prosecutors presented Linda Morrison's technical documents, testimony from dozens of victims whose ideas Katherine had stolen, and damning internal emails showing Katherine had knowingly filed fraudulent patents. The defense tried to paint it as aggressive but legal business practices, but the evidence was overwhelming. Katherine was convicted on 17 counts of fraud and conspiracy. She faced up to 20 years in prison, forfeiture of billions in assets, and permanent banishment from the tech industry. But before sentencing, Katherine requested to speak to Ashley privately. They met in a courthouse conference room, 2 women connected by blood and betrayal, separated by choices that had echoed across 45 years. "I want you to know I don't regret it," Katherine said, her voice devoid of emotion. Linda was brilliant, but she lacked vision. She would have published her work in some academic journal, shared it freely, and died unknown. "I saw its commercial potential and built something extraordinary." "You built something stolen," Ashley corrected. "And you destroyed your own sister to do it." "I gave her a comfortable life. That $200,000 bought her house, supported you both. She could have had nothing." "She had nothing anyway," Ashley said. "No career, no recognition, no family connections, because you forced her to pretend you didn't exist. You didn't just steal her invention, you stole her entire life." Katherine was quiet for a moment. "Why didn't you take the settlement? You could have had financial security, Dylan's medical bills covered, everything you needed. Why insist on destroying me?" "Because my son is going to grow up in a world where people believe stolen ideas are acceptable as long as you don't get caught. He's going to face challenges his whole life because of his medical condition. And I refuse to teach him that powerful people can do whatever they want without consequences." "Noble," Katherine said with bitter sarcasm. "How's that nobility working out for you? You're unemployed, drowning in legal bills, and you've made yourself unemployable in Seattle's service industry. Was it worth it?" Ashley pulled out the diamond brooch, her mother's brooch, the symbol of everything Katherine had stolen. "My mother wore this under her clothes for 45 years, hidden away, like the truth about what you'd done to her. She died believing her story didn't matter, that you were too powerful to fight." She set the brooch on the table between them. "But it did matter. She mattered. And every innovator you stole from mattered. You're going to prison not because I'm noble, but because lies eventually collapse under their own weight. You built your empire on stolen ideas and destroyed lives. It was never going to last." Katherine stared at the brooch, and for the first time, Ashley saw genuine emotion break through, not remorse, but something like regret for the cost of her choices. "Linda was my sister. I did love her in my way. If that was love," Ashley said quietly, "I hope Dylan never experiences it." She left Katherine in the conference room and walked out of the courthouse into Seattle's afternoon rain. Behind her, the woman who'd built a tech empire on betrayal prepared for sentencing. Ahead, Ashley faced an uncertain future, rebuilding her life from the wreckage of her confrontation with power. But she had something Katherine would never have: her integrity intact, her mother's legacy restored, and the knowledge that she'd fought for truth when staying silent would have been easier. 2 years after the trial, Ashley stood at Linda Morrison's grave, where a new headstone had been installed. It read, "Linda Morrison, 1955-2023, inventor, mother, pioneer creator of modern cloud computing architecture. Her ideas changed the world." Beside Ashley stood Dylan, now 8 years old and stronger than he'd been in years. The GoFundMe money had covered his treatments until they found a better insurance plan. He was thriving, asking questions about the grandmother he'd never known, about the technology she'd invented, about why someone would steal another person's ideas. "Grandma was really smart, huh?" Dylan said, touching the cold headstone. "She was brilliant," Ashley confirmed, "and brave and kind. She created something amazing, and even when someone stole it from her, she never stopped being kind." "Are you going to invent something?" Dylan asked. Ashley smiled. "No, but I'm going to make sure that when people do invent things, they get credit for their work. No more Katherine's getting away with theft." The Westbrook Technologies settlement, after Katherine's criminal conviction and asset forfeiture, had established a $200 million fund for innovators whose ideas had been stolen. Ashley had been appointed to the board overseeing the fund, using her experience to help other victims of corporate theft. She'd also become an advocate for single parents navigating medical crises, using her platform to fight insurance companies that denied coverage for rare diseases. And she'd started a non-profit providing legal support for individuals fighting against powerful corporations, making sure that lack of resources never again meant lack of justice. Katherine Westbrook was serving 12 years in federal prison, her empire dismantled, her reputation destroyed. Westbrook Technologies had been sold and rebranded, its new leadership committed to ethical practices and innovation without theft. As Ashley and Dylan left the cemetery, she thought about the diamond brooch now displayed in the Computer History Museum in Silicon Valley, alongside Linda Morrison's original technical documents. The brooch that had started everything, that had connected past betrayal to present justice, that symbolized both the cost of ambition and the endurance of truth. What began as a casual comment about antique jewelry had become a story about how stolen legacies demand restoration, how the children of betrayal can achieve the justice their parents couldn't, and how truth, however painful, is always worth fighting for. Katherine Westbrook proved that you can build an empire on lies, but you can't maintain it. Ashley Morrison proved that ordinary people possess extraordinary courage when fighting for what's right. And Linda Morrison, finally acknowledged as the brilliant innovator she'd always been, proved that some legacies cannot be stolen. They can only be delayed. The diamond brooch remains in that museum, the sapphire Orion constellation glinting under careful lights, a reminder that truth eventually outshines even the most carefully constructed lies. And somewhere in Seattle, a young boy with a rare blood disorder is learning that his grandmother changed the world, that powerful people don't always win, and that fighting for justice, even when it costs everything, is always the right choice. If this story of corporate theft, family betrayal, and the courage to demand accountability moved you, remember that similar battles are being fought every day by innovators whose ideas are stolen. Families destroyed by powerful interests, and individuals fighting systems designed to silence them. Stand up for truth, demand accountability, and never let anyone convince you that justice is only for those who can afford it. Real change begins with one person refusing to accept that power makes right.